How do you make good grow in Detroit? That's the focus of my conversation we're sharing today with
Shamyle Dobbs, CEO of Michigan Community Resources.
And
Knox, Executive Director of Eden Gardens Community Association.
Then I'll tell you about a couple openings happening this spring in greater downtown Detroit. I'm Jer Stays, and this is your Daily Detroit for Tuesday, February 18th, 2020. We'll get started after a quick reminder that our members make this show possible. You can join those wonderful people at patreon.com/dailydetroit. And thank you. All right, so first off, I wanted to set the table with, I love the name Eden Gardens. So what is that, and what's the concept behind it?
Eden Gardens is a community on Detroit East Side. We started with a little small 3 city lots of garden, and from that garden grew all the ideas we have today: a playground, a community house of learning, pocket park. So Eden Gardens is a place where we give food out to help the elders and to low-income families, and it all started from just a small garden.
So we're on the east side. I actually grew up on that side of town.
Oh, we're 6 blocks north of Connors and 2 blocks east of the Detroit City Airport. So just 6 blocks past the airport and 2 blocks east, you'll run into Eden Gardens on Glenfield Street.
Oh, yeah, I'm actually familiar. My family had a house on Gunston for a long time. How have you found the need in the community and found support for what you're doing?
Well, the first thing is that I was living in L.A. and I became ill, and it was nowhere on my radar to do this. And after returning home, I talked to my neighbor and started a block club. And from that block club, I was at a Rosh Chodesh meeting, which is a Jewish meeting, and they were talking about Monsanto's and the gardening. And I said, hey, we have 3 vacant lots in our community. So we started there with the garden. And the grass was like tall as an 8-year-old. And we got together and cut the grass. And that's how it started. From that garden, we got our first grant from the Jewish Women Foundation for 3 years. And from that, we started getting more and more grants. And we met Shamyle in the process from MCR to help us write the bigger grants. So we were successful in getting a grant from Detroit Chamber and MGM, a $30,000 grant.
Wow, that's really exciting. How does it feel to be able to help people make those kind of things happen? Because I'll tell you, there are so many projects in the city that really could use that kind of magic grant touch.
Absolutely. So it is an honor and it is a privilege, one, to work in the company of individuals whose sole mission is servant leadership. So all of my colleagues at MCR, Michigan Community Resources, they are truly passionate about serving those that are serving others. So our mission, when you think about the baseline of our mission, it's really about strong nonprofits, strong organizations, and strong leaders such as Karen. So it's, grant writing and grant support is sort of part of it, but really the genesis and the roots of what we do was actually connecting nonprofit organizations to legal support. Our founder, Steve Tabachman, had
Steve, yeah.
You know Steve.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, with Global Detroit right now, had the grand vision of alleviating poverty, right? And thinking about, okay, how can he connect the dots between his legal background, his network, but more importantly, leveraging the private bar to serve as a vehicle to shepherd change for organizations. So from that, morphed into all of the services that we have today. So 20 years later, we are still here, still on the ground, still supporting Karen and others, and it's awesome.
Well, and I think on the ground, can you talk a little bit about how important it is to connect to those resources? Because I see so many good projects in the city over the years, and they get to a point where it's like you get past the one person stage, right? The 1 or 2 person that absolutely love the thing and they make the thing go. But in order to get to the next level, there needs to be funding. And I think so many times in Detroit and in Metro Detroit, we tend to kind of forget that funding piece and how important it is and why it's important to get some funding to do these things to really enhance them.
I think it's so important because it's one thing to get it started. It's another thing to keep it going. So we are constantly looking at grants and looking for sponsorship so that we don't have to, that we can each year know that the money is going to be there to keep the program going. when you do a grant, it's a competition, and you're not the only one applying for it. So there's no guarantee you're going to get it. But with sponsorship, we would know that the money is there every year. And it's important because the community is important. Children learning is important. And our children is the value. That's our tomorrow. So we need to invest in them. And we need to invest in seeing that they can have arts. They can have an option, or rather, of having good housing when they become adults, whether they have a good job, but without the proper education, they can't have that. So we need that sponsorship to keep any program, and there's many of us throughout the city to keep our programs going.
Yeah. And when you think about sustainability, I mean, especially in the work that many community-based and nonprofit organizations are doing, it's three-pronged, right? There's community sustainability, just thinking about how rooted your work is in community and how centered you are in thinking about moving the needle forward on the issues that you're trying to change. The other piece, obviously, is financial stability. So, all the things that Karen talked about, having the space and grace to plan and to think about the future necessitates, being supported and funded in a way that you can have the ability to do that. But the third part of it is organizational stability. So many organizations that we see, unfortunately, because they're sort of in the hamster wheel of trying to find the next grant, the next opportunity, the next sponsorship, they can't innovate, they can't sustain, they can't even get their house in order because it's this process of we have to keep the lights on, we have to keep the staff paid, we're trying to figure out how to, forgive the analogy, rob Peter to pay Paul. So I think having organizations like an MCR, other intermediary partners that do this work is incredibly important because it alleviates the burden to just identify what's out there. Some of it is just knowing what's out there. And if you have your head to the ground and your feet on the ground and you're just kind of doing the work, you may not be able to pull up and just take a moment to assess the resources and the opportunities at your foot.
Well, it also distributes the load a little bit, right?
That's right.
Because not everybody's necessarily great at the funding part.
That's
Some
right.
people are really great at connecting in the community and working with folks and enabling folks. And I think, I don't know, everyone's seen that shirt that says Detroit hustles harder, right?
Yep.
Well, I like to think that it's like Detroit hustles / side hustles / weekend jobs / night jobs harder. Because I don't know anybody in this town without 3 jobs.
All the things.
All the things. And so in order for people to really succeed at their main job, I think it's important that there are things like, MCR and the like to make sure that they exist and that they can continue on. So when it comes to Eden Gardens, what are some of the high level things that you've done over the last couple of years that you want people to know about in case they've never met you?
Some of the highlighted things, one, we first created a pocket park, which the men in the community built a gazebo. We put 3 picnic tables and 3 grills and a bike rack. The next thing we did, this was with purchasing land that was with money donated to us. Then we got the grant. We got 2 grants, AARP and first, and then GM grant, where we put swings, a teeter-totter, slide, ellipticus, that's how you pronounce it. And we took a tree that we cut down and made a chessboard. And it is an intergenerational park, for the elders and the children to come together. And we know that when elders interact with children, they can delay dementia and all other kind of problems. So this intergenerational park is the biggest thing that we have done since we started to really help the community. We took vacant land where it was trees growing up like a little forest, and now there's a park there. Now the children are no longer playing in vacant houses or in the street. They have somewhere they can play, and that's so important. And our next step is the Community House of Learning, stair steps to change for returning citizens, downstairs and upstairs for children, where we have a room for children of trauma. My granddaughters, they call it emotional overload, where they can talk to a therapist, because so many of our children act out in school because there's something going on and they need someone to talk to.
Yeah.
And that will deter the suicide problems we have. We can't say it will help all, but you don't know if you help one person, that'll make a change.
Yeah.
And then we have address illiteracy, computers, and teach robotics. We have people committed to teaching robotics and ballet, where we can have arts and yoga for the adults. All these things in the community, and for the returning citizens, resume writing. Twitter committed to teaching that, teaching them how to do resumes and interviews, and giving them an opportunity to be in the workforce. They come back to our community. So we need to make them able, working men and women, so they can contribute back to society. So those are our goals in Eden Gardens community.
And the theme to me, like listening to all of that, goes stability. And when you think about things like education, right? Like teachers are great and there's so many wonderful teachers, but there's only so much they can do when there's not stability at home or stability provided through other sources. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. And when it comes to returning citizens, I mean, so often we have a situation where people, they go away and then they come back to what? Right? And there's got to be opportunities and doors that open. Otherwise, things are going to go straight back to where they were.
That's right.
And I think that's a reality on the ground that a lot of people don't realize, and why I think it's important. There's so many of those return to work programs that some companies are doing and things like that. So with your organization, the MCR, how many Eden Gardens are you working with?
That's a great question. So on an average annual basis, we work with a couple hundred organizations. Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
So we have the privilege through a variety of different initiatives to work with organizations like Karen. So as I mentioned earlier, when we first started, we provided pro bono legal assistance to nonprofit organizations. Now we have attorneys on staff that work directly with community-based organizations and nonprofits. So that's one piece of it. This year, we just piloted an initiative where we're going to be providing legal assistance to small businesses and entrepreneurs and individuals looking to start a business as a vehicle by which, from the same sort of vantage point that we connected nonprofits to attorneys, to really sort of bridge that equity gap for business owners that ultimately could not afford legal services, that are going on LegalZoom, all of these other sort of online legal tools, to really have sound legal advice as they're thinking about forming their business. We now work with the Kresge Foundation supporting their capacity building initiative through KIPD, and we provide post-grantee support, coaching, counseling to organizations like Karen that are thinking about project implementation. So just a variety of ways, and there's other programs that, we can go on and on.
Right.
That I could talk about, but ultimately, when you think about kind of the roots of what we do, it's really designed around how can we meet the most pressing needs of those on the front line in community doing great work that, again, would typically be excluded from grant making or could not afford those services.
And that's part of the beauty of this, is that inclusion and that ability to open up those doors. And, as a personal note to our listeners, think about the multiplying effect here.
That's right.
Of all the things, like how the multiplying effect of not just the wonderful work that you're doing, Karen, but all the other people that are getting helped, and why it's so important that we all support these kind of programs, because I think lots of people love to wear the Detroit t-shirt.
That's right.
But I think with every Detroit t-shirt you should buy, you should throw the same amount of money toward a actual community program, right? I think they should go hand in hand, because it's got to be more than wearing the shirt. It's got to be about putting the shoulder to the wheel.
Absolutely. And there's several ways that individuals and your listeners can contribute. There's time, right? So you can invest your time in volunteering in organizations like Karen. Obviously there's your treasure. So if you have the resources and the means, even if it's as small as $10 to $20, that goes a long way for organizations, again, that would be typically excluded from opportunities to get larger foundation grants. Or you can really think about your talent. What are the ways that you can connect your everyday job or skill or small business, again, to move the needle forward on the mission of these organizations?
Well, and if people want to do that, how can they?
Great question. So I think the first thing, obviously, because Karen is sitting right next to me, you can directly connect with Karen at Eden Gardens. But for those individuals that may not be aware of organizations like Karen, you can most certainly reach out to MCR. You can check out our website, www.mi-community.org. There are other partners of ours in this space, COAC Detroit. There's the U of M School of Social Work, so many other organizations that, again, by virtue of their program and design are supporting community-based organizations, and we can make those connections.
Well, I will make sure to put a link in the show notes, and thank you so much for coming to Daily Detroit.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Here are a couple of openings to know about. Farmer's Restaurant in Detroit's Eastern Market closed last year when its owners retired. The shuttering, with little notice of one of the market's go-to breakfast spots, created a lot of reaction online. But word comes today that eggs will be cracked again at 2542 Market Street. Farmer Frank's will open this spring. Frank Yoka, behind Wiggly's Wholesale Meats and Frank's Deli, is behind the project. I'm told the inside of the 4,600 square foot space is getting a complete farm-themed remodel. The restaurant will seat more than 100 people at a time. Of course, since it's from the Wiggly's guy, Wiggly's Meats will be on the menu. But he'll also work with local farmers to get things on there, too. 20 jobs will be created, with the old Farmer's Restaurant employees having a shot at them if they'd like to come back. Midtown is getting a new taco and tequila joint. Condado Tacos, a popular national chain with 15 locations, including a spot in Royal Oak, is opening on Selden Street on March 12th. It'll be just west of 2nd Street and around the corner from Selden Standard. The corner is becoming quite the little bar district, with She-Wolf, Honest John's, Smith & Co., and Castalia all within short distance. Condado does build-your-own tacos with whiskey and tequila. This isn't really what you'd find at a corner taqueria in Southwest Detroit, per se. I feel like these are show tacos, fancy tacos, but authentic, I'm not so sure about. If you want a proper taco like I like them, head over to Taqueria El Rey on Verner. It's cash only, but so good. You can drink there, and afterward, hit up Mutiny Bar across the street for some tiki action. And that'll do it for your Daily Detroit. That background music was done by Bonus Points, and you can find it at chillhop.com. It's really great music to work to. I will put a link in the show notes. If you've got some smooth grooves we can legally use, shoot me a note at dailydetroit@gmail.com. Engineer Randy is almost ready with our new podcast phone project, which is pretty exciting. And there you'll be able to leave a voicemail we may play on the air, among other features that I'm not ready to tell you about yet. And finally, thanks to our members on Patreon who make the show possible. You can join those awesome folks at patreon.com/dailydetroit. I'm Chair Stays. Take care of each other, and we'll see you around Detroit.